In this tutorial, we're going to use Adobe Illustrator CC 2020 to go through Classroom in a Book, Chapter 5. This is part 2 for transforming artwork. When we left off, we had just finished putting these elements into these artboards, so now we're going to go ahead and work on scaling some objects. So the first thing we're going to do is play with this person in the raincoat right here. So we're going to grab our selection tool, and with our selection tool, we're going to go ahead and click on that person and do a Control plus and zoom in a few times so we can see a little bit better. We're going to go over to the properties panel and choose that center point as our reference, so it will do our actions from the inside out. And we're going to make sure that our constrain width and height proportions are set. And we're going to go ahead and turn that to be 30% in that width field. So we're going to go ahead and put 30 and then % sign and hit tab. So we have rescaled it, but you're going to notice that we've got a little bit of a problem in that his arms did not scale with the rest of him. So we're going to go ahead and make sure we fix that. So let's go ahead and do a view, and let's do hide edges. It's about halfway down. So why did this happen? This happened because by default, the strokes and the effects are not scaled along with objects, and we have to go ahead and tell it to do that. So let's go ahead and do a view, show edges. And let's do edit, undo scale. And we're going to go ahead and fix that. So in the properties panel, with the little 3 ellipses in the more section, we're going to make sure that we click the scale, strokes, and effects is also clicked. Then we're going to go ahead and go to our width and do 30%. And it will go ahead and do the whole thing for us at once, which is exactly what we want. So let's go ahead and go over to the flower. So I'm going to grab my space bar and grab my flower. I'm going to zoom out a few times so I can see that flower a little bit better. And the flower is pretty big, and we want to go ahead and mess with that a little bit. Let's grab our selection tool and click on our flower. And we're going to go ahead and go into our rotate tool, and underneath our rotate tool is one called scale. So scale is another way that we can change the size of something. So we're going to double click it. And when we double click, we want to go ahead and say scale it uniform. And we want to go ahead and take it down 20%. And we want to make sure that scale, strokes, and effects is also chosen. And we can go ahead and say OK. So sometimes we want to do it that way if we've got a lot of different elements. Maybe we have overlapping artwork and we want to make sure that precision, it's scaled really nicely. So let's go ahead and we want to go ahead and grab this with the selection tool and drag it up to our artboard. Go ahead and put it up here in the ground over here. All right, and now we're going to play with a few other options. So let's go ahead and add a few more flowers. So let's grab our flower. Above our flower, let's hit Alt. You get the 2 arrows, so you know you're copying. Grab a few more flowers. We're going to go ahead and play with some of those flowers later on. Let's go ahead and do a Control S and save what we have so far. So let's go ahead, we've got several flowers now. Now we're going to reflect some objects. So now we're going to actually play with this wind item down here on I guess it's a curly wind shape. So let's go ahead with our selection tool and grab that curly wind shape. Let's do an edit and a copy. And let's do an edit, paste in place. It's going to create a second copy of that. We then want to go over to our scale tool. We want to go down here to reflect. And we're going to go ahead and click on a straight part of this path so that we know what axis we're reflecting around. And let's go ahead with our pointer off the right edge, drag it down. It's going to go ahead and drag that copy down for us. Now if we wanted to, if I hit undo, if I hit shift as I do that, it'll make sure it goes down in 45-degree angles. All right, so let's go ahead with our selection tool. And with that shape still selected, let's go to our more options. And let's go ahead and make sure that scale effects is not chosen. And let's go ahead and make it just a little bit bigger. So I'm going to go ahead and make the wind shape just a little bit bigger. looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and select the whole thing and group it to create one single wind shape. So let's do a view and a fit all in window. Let's go ahead and grab that wind shape and move it up here to our infographic. I'm going to do my Alt and add a few more. Nope, undo. Make sure I hit Alt, that I get my 2 arrows. Pay attention to what I'm copying. Alt, 2 arrows. So you want to put a few different winds in there. So let's go ahead and do a Control S and save what we've got so far. And let's go back down to our little person right here. So let's grab our selection tool. Hit him. Let's do a Control plus and zoom in a few times so we can see a little bit more. Then let's go ahead, grab our selection tool, and we can use the arrows that we're used to using. If we hold Shift as we do it, it will go ahead and rotate him in 45-degree angles. So we're perfect there. So let's go ahead and scroll over. I'm going to do Control plus, minus, zoom back out. We're going to go ahead and play with this element now. So Control plus and zoom in over here. And this time we're going to use a different tool. We're going to go under Rotate, which is now under the Reflect tool. So now we're going to go ahead and create kind of the windmills. So we're going to click here at the bottom of our windmill. So we're giving it a point to rotate from. And we're going to go off to the right side, and as we drag, we're going to either do Option Shift or Alt Shift as we drag this, and it's going to make a second copy of that windmill. Let's do Shift and Alt one more time and drag another copy. Oh, cancel. All right, so I've got my bottom here. I'm going to go ahead to my Shift Alt, drag bottom. All right, the next thing we could also do would be Object and Transform. Do Transform again. And it'll automatically give us that whatever we did just last. So let's go ahead and grab our selection tool, grab all 4 and group them to create one single object. Now with it still selected, let's double click in that rotate, and let's go ahead and tell it to rotate 45 degrees and say OK. And it's going to go ahead and move that. So we've got that element. Let's do a view, fit all in window. And let's go ahead and drag that with our selection tool up onto our windmill up here. So you can do a Control plus, zoom in, kind of see where you put it, do a Control S and save what we have so far. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is start distorting some effects, objects with effects. So let's go down to one of our flowers with our selection tool. Hit my space bar. Okay, I'm going to grab my flower. And I'm going to go ahead and double click that flower to enter the isolation mode. And I want to just mess with the larger orange circle, so I'm going to click on that one. I'm going to go over here to my properties box. Under appearance, I'm going to hit FX. And I'm going to say Distort and Transform. And I want to do Pucker and Bloat. We'll make sure our preview is on. And let's go ahead and bump that up to about 35 and hit Tab, and it's going to go ahead and distort that shape and say OK. And we want to go ahead and exit, leave that isolation mode. So you can do that to a couple different flowers if you want. I'm just going to do it to the one. Let's go ahead and go over to our days per the week flags, kind of over here. Or days per year, sorry. And let's go ahead and grab this top flag. Let's go ahead and go to that effect. Come down to our Distort and Transform. And this time we're going to tell it to twist. Make sure our preview is turned on. And let's go ahead and change it to 20 and hit Tab. And it's going to give us kind of a nice look there. So we're going to put OK. I'm going to go ahead and select the next one and shift click all those other flags as well, so I can do everything at the same time. And let's go to Effect and apply twist. So it's going to make them all the same. Let's do a Control S and save what we've got so far. The next thing we're going to do, I'm going to do a view, fit artboard and window. And the next thing we're going to do is going to play with this element right down here. We're going to turn it into this signboard. So let's go ahead and jump in there. Let's go into our selection tool and grab this one that says East West. Let's go to our edit our toolbar down here at the bottom. We want to go ahead and add a few tools. So we want to go and make sure we do the transform tool. Mine's already up there. So you want to add your free transform tool, and you want to grab that puppet warp tool. So you're going to go ahead and just drag it over here onto your board, and we want to put puppet warp right underneath. So you're going to add those tools because we're going to need those here in a minute. So I'm going to do an escape, hide those. So when I've got free transform, I'm going to get a free widget. They're going to do a few things. So the top one is constrain. We have free transform. We have perspective distort. We have a free distort. So we've got a few different things going on. So with this selected, we're going to come down to the perspective distort, which is the third one. And we're going to go to view and smart guides and turn those off to make it a little bit easier for us to manipulate this item. So now we can, adjust it without snapping everything on the document. So let's go ahead over that lower right hand corner, and we're going to go ahead and drag it down a little bit, and you're going to see it's going to grow just that end, which is exactly what we want. And let's go ahead and let's hit our Command key or Control, and it'll let you switch to that selection tool without changing tools. And go ahead and pull down and make north-south about the same. So let's go ahead and now do our view and turn our smart guides back on. And let's do a Control S and save. So now we're going to shear the object. So when we shear an object, it kind of slants or skews the sides, and it lets us create kind of a different asymmetrical. So with north-south still selected, we're going to go ahead and go to shear, which is under the rotate tool. And we're going to go ahead and move that pointer, and we're going to hold shift as we do it, and it's going to till we get to about a -20. So you can kind of see we've got a number going here. So I'm going to go up about -20. Close enough today. All right, and we're going to go ahead and grab that east-west. We're going to do our Command, Control. We're going to grab east-west, and we're going to do the same thing. We want to go ahead and click that shape, make sure we're still in this shear tool. We're going to grab Shift, Constrain, and drag down until we get to about -160. Come down a little bit more. All right, I'm going to let go of my mouse, then, lost it. I'm going to undo a few times. Let's try that again. Hold my shift, bring it down, bring it over. 160. All right, let go of my mouse, I let go of my shift. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we need to make this actually work on the sign itself, because right now it looks a little bit wonky. So we're going to go to that selection tool and grab the one that says north-south. And we want to go ahead and we want to drag it so it's aligned with the sign a little bit more than the other one. And we're going to fix the east-west as well, so they're kind of together. And we will go ahead and fix the other part. Let's go ahead on our north-south and hit ungroup. We're going to go ahead and hit just the north part because we're going to play with that element. And let's do object, arrange, and bring to front. Object, arrange, bring to front. So you can kind of see, oh, I grabbed the whole thing, which we didn't necessarily want to do. Grab minus. All right, so I just want to bring this one, ungroup it. And I lost my words. That's a problem. All right, regroup. Undo. All right, got my north. Arrange, bring to front. And I lost it twice. I'm going to just have a problem today, aren't I? There we go. And so now, if I don't love it, I could go back with my shear and fix how that is going to look. So if you look at the end one, I'd end up a little bit better. They stretched it out a little bit more than I did mine, because that could be part of it. So if I grab that, I can adjust that up and down a little bit. So you see you do have a few different options. I'm going to hold my shift and kind of shrink it a little bit. So my shear wasn't exactly perfect as part of it as well. All right, I then want to go ahead and grab those percentage numbers and move them up so they are at the correct end. Zoom in a little bit of each one. So 20 should be over here. So because this is a tutorial, I'm not too worried. If it was for real, yes, I'd say go back in and make sure you could actually read all your signs the way you're supposed to be able to read them. All right, let's go ahead and do a Control S and save what we have so far. Next thing we're going to do is play with our rain jacket person. And let's go ahead to grab that rain jacket person and grab our selection tool. Let's go ahead and drag him up, or her, up onto our flagpole. Let's do a Control plus and zoom in a little bit. And now we're going to go ahead and play with the puppet warp. So we want to make sure the hands of the person are on the flagpole. And we want to go ahead and under our, we just brought that up, our transform tool, we put our puppet wrap, which has got a puppet warp, which is the little tack. And by default, when we click on here, it's going to go ahead and show us some of those elements. If you do show mesh, you're going to see all the little parts. Anywhere that you have the little round is where the pins are. Those pins allow us to rotate from those different items. So it's going to, by default, identify where it thinks you want to bend the items. So we're going to grab that and come about halfway down the arm where that elbow would be to make kind of a place to show, you know, where we'd bend that arm. So let's go ahead and turn that mesh off so it's not quite as busy. Let's click that pin on the hand to select it, and then we're going to go ahead and drag it. So it's going to drag just the hand and not the rest of the artwork. So it kind of looks like he's flying off the flagpole a little bit. And let's go ahead and come down to, with that hand still selected, let's go and you can, so you get the rotate, you can actually rotate the way that wrist is a little bit. So you can play with that element as well. So let's go ahead and click that pin that was added to the leg. We don't really want it, so we're going to go ahead and hit delete or backspace and get rid of that one. It was not in a good place. So let's go ahead and add a pin right here between the two elements, and let's drag that pin for the feet up. It's going to go ahead and let us make the person fly, and we can go ahead and drag over and make their feet kind of go down a little bit more. So you can see you've got the options to play with those different elements. So I'm going to do a Control S and save that one. Let's do a Control minus, zoom out, and you will see if you go back to your selection tool that we have created a pretty cool infographic, and you can take a lot of these pieces, a lot of these elements to create your own infographics later on. So let's go ahead and do a file, come down to package. It's going to ask where do you want to put it. I'm going to make sure I put it in my lesson 5 folder. So I've got a lot of folders. Design, class, or in a book. We're in lesson number 5. And select the folder. I'm going to say instead of 5 folder, I'm going to put PKG, so I know which one it is, and package, and it will not steal the fonts. Say OK. show me the package. So it's going to go ahead and pop up my package window in my lesson 5. So I've got my PKG. I'm going to do my right click and ascend to compressed folder. And that is the one I'm going to turn in for chapter 5. Can't wait to see what you come up with.